Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a beginner-friendly tutorial showing you exactly how to embroider these Taylor Swift inspired Converse. Sadly, I won't be going to the Eras tour this year, but I know plenty of my followers over on Instagram and here on YouTube are huge Swifties, so I decided to design and embroider these Taylor Swift inspired shoes, and I'll also be doing a giveaway for these shoes over on Instagram. But before we get into the tutorial, I have to tell you about the sponsor of today's video. This video is sponsored by Vivaya, a shoe company that's all about combining style, comfort, and sustainability. If you're anything like me and love shoes that are not only stylish but also eco-friendly, then you're going to love Vivaya. Their shoes are made from recycled plastic bottles, which means every pair helps reduce waste and protect our planet. They sent me a pair of their Margot Mary Janes in their almond colorway. I love these shoes because they're incredibly comfortable thanks to the cushioned insoles and breathable fabric. Plus, they come in a variety of colors and styles, so you can find the perfect pair for any outfit. These shoes are perfect for embroidery because the fabric is not super tightly woven. It's a super breathable fabric. I did a little bit of stump work embroidery on these Margot Mary Janes. I added one little blue orchid to the side of each of the shoes, and I think they turned out really cute. Did you know that the orchid is the national flower of Singapore? It also happens to be my mum's favourite flower, so I had a little fun adding a blue orchid to each of these shoes. This was actually my very first stump work embroidery project, but the shoe fabric made it so easy to attach the petals to the shoes. I added a small golden bead to the centre before stitching the stem, and then my work was complete. I just love how this orchid turned out on these Margot Mary Janes. What I love most about Vivaya shoes is that they're machine washable. Yes, you heard that right. You can just toss them in the washing machine and they'll come out looking good as new. This is a real game changer for someone like me who loves to keep my shoes looking clean and fresh. The packaging for Vivaya shoes is also eco-friendly, using recycled materials to further reduce their environmental impact. All Vivaya shoes are vegan as they do not use any animal products for their manufacturing process. Whether you're looking for flats, heels, loafers, or even boots, Vivaya has something for everyone. As we're transitioning into fall, I'm definitely looking to add more boots to my closet. The quality of these shoes is so high and they genuinely feel like walking on clouds. The cushion technology in the soles of these boots is like nothing I've ever worn before. I can't wait to add some embroidery and then style these Delilah boots. Of course, they have plenty of summer options available for these warmer temperatures as well. These Kiara sandals are outrageously cute. If someone came up to me on the street and told me that these were made from recycled plastic bottles, I would not believe them. The fact that these are made with yarn that has been made from recycled plastic bottles really blows my mind. The metallic yarn used in the straps is definitely giving summer vibes, and I can't wait to use these in the coming weeks. I'm so pleased that I got to work on a different style of shoe for once. Thanks so much to Vivaya for sponsoring this video. I'll have their store linked in the description of this video so that you can shop their eco-friendly, insanely comfortable shoes. Now let's get back to the video. So the first thing that I'm going to do is get my shoes ready for embroidery. You have to unlace your shoes. I do recommend, if you are a beginner and you're trying this out, I recommend totally unlacing the shoes. I'm just a little bit lazy and I unlace them all the way down to the bottom eyelets, and then I wrap them around the shoes and just tuck them in. I also tuck in the tongue of the shoe because it's really easy to accidentally embroider onto that. So it's just best to get the laces and the tongue out of the way to make sure there are no mistakes when you're embroidering. There's nothing worse than having to pull out some stitches that you accidentally stitched through some laces or the tongue. The design I'm going for today is inspired by the piano that Taylor uses when she plays her surprise songs. I think it recently broke, but I think I read somewhere that they managed to fix it and it's back up and running again. So I'm going to go in with my Dritz disappearing marker and I'm going to mark out a bunch of flowers on the outsides of the shoes, and then after I'm done with those, I'm going to go in and add in the stems. This disappearing marker is going to be linked in the description of this video, along with all of the other supplies that I'm using to embroider these shoes. So if you do want to try this project out for yourself, all of the supplies will be listed below. This pen really is magic. Whenever I use it, I use the blue side because that's the side that disappears when it comes into contact with water. So if you make a mistake or put a flower in the wrong place, all you have to do is spray it with a little bit of water and the ink will disappear. It's really perfect for beginners and perfect for those who are a little bit crafty and into drawing. If you have a vision, it's really easy to bring it to life with this marker. I'm making the stems a little bit squiggly, just how they are on the piano. And then I'm also going in and adding some leaves to each of the stems. And this is a key reason that I really love this marker. I went in and tried to write out a quote that I wanted on the shoes from one of Taylor's songs, and the letters were coming out a little bit bigger than how I wanted them. So I just scrapped that idea. I sprayed it with a little bit of water and all of that ink disappeared. And then I just waited for it to dry before going back in with a fine line pencil and writing out the quote that I wanted on the shoes. The pencil is just going to be hidden by the thread. So I think this is also a really good technique if you want something super small and detailed like text on your shoes and the marker just isn't doing the job. You can always go in with a really fine lined pencil to get that done. Okay, so now I am moving on to the insides of the shoes. On the insides, I just want a couple of the flowers on a much smaller scale, and I'm also going to put a few sprigs of greenery in there as well. All of them are going to be placed around the Converse logo in a circle. I think that looks the best on the inside of Converse shoes. And again, a really good thing about this marker is whatever you draw out, it's basically going to be a rough guide. When it comes time to actually embroider, you might decide, oh, I actually want to embroider these flowers a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger than what I've drawn onto the shoe. You can totally do that and just use the marks that you've drawn out as rough guides, because once you're done, you're going to be erasing the marker with a little bit of water anyway, so you're not going to see the lines. I've chosen colours that looked really similar to the florals painted on the piano. If you want to use these exact colours, the numbers on the clothes pegs will correspond with the colour codes for both DMC and Lovey Mag embroidery thread. If you're thinking of trying this project for yourself, one thing you definitely have to have are finger protectors. I wear these every day and they truly save the skin on my fingers, and they also make it a lot easier to pull the needle up through the shoe fabric. I'm going to be starting on the insides of the shoes, and the things I'm going to be embroidering first are the little greenery sprigs. I like to do one long stitch for the stem, and then I couch this with a few anchor stitches where I want it to curve. I put about 3 small anchor stitches in for each stem, just couching it with a curve wherever I want it to bend. Once I'm happy with the bend in the stem, I'm going to go in and stitch all of the leaves. I just do very simple, small, lazy daisy stitches for these leaves. And since the stems are so small, I don't actually go back in and fill these lazy daisy stitches with anything. I just leave them as they are. We're going to be using quite a few lazy daisy stitches during this project, and my tip for really great lazy daisy stitches is to make sure you have the perfect amount of tension on your thread before you go in and anchor it. You don't want it to be too tight, and you also don't want it to be too loose. I tend to err on the looser side just because I like it when the lazy daisy stitch looks a little bit fluffy. There's nothing worse for me than when a lazy daisy stitch is too taut, too tight. This is what I'm left with after I'm done with the first greenery sprig. I'm going to go in and kind of speed run the rest of them off camera and just show you a few clips. I'll be doing this throughout the tutorial, otherwise this video would be about 5 hours long. Next we're going to stitch the small flowers. I'm going in first with this nice purple colour. Again, we'll be using lazy daisy stitches. I forgot to mention that I used 2 strands of embroidery thread for the greenery sprigs, and for these flowers I'm using 3 strands of embroidery thread. I wanted the flowers to look a little more puffier than the greenery on the insides of the shoes. I'm going to be alternating the colours for these flowers, so I'm doing one purple flower on one side of the logo, and then I'm also doing another purple flower on the other side of the logo. The next colour I'm going to use is this red colour. I'll be doing 2 more of the smaller flowers on the inside of the shoes in this colour, and then I'll go in with the green and the yellow. But save the yellow for the end, save the yellow for the last flower, because we're also going to be using that colour yellow for the insides of all of the other flowers that we stitched. This way you won't have to change your thread colour as much. Once I'm done stitching the yellow flower, I'm going to go in with the same thread colour and stitch the pollen in the centre of all of the other flowers. I'm going to be using the French knot stitch for this, and since we have 3 strands of thread, I'm only going to be wrapping it around the needle once to complete the French knot stitch. This is going to leave us with a really small dainty little stitch which just sits in the middle of the flowers perfectly. The key to really great French knots, again, is keeping the perfect amount of tension on the thread as you pull it through the shoes. It's a little different from the lazy daisy stitch. You want to keep it as tight as possible. I like to keep my thumb on the thread as I'm pulling it through, just to make sure I don't get any additional knots that I don't want. And then for the yellow flower, we're just going to go in with a little bit of that red thread that we use for the red flowers. And now I'm done stitching the inside of this shoe. I am going to do the other shoe off camera, but first I'm going to show you how I spray this with water to make all of the ink disappear. I like to use these little mist bottles, and I basically just drench the outside of the shoe. Now I'm moving on to the outside of the shoe. I'm going to be stitching the text at the top of the shoe first. Just going to be using a regular black thread for this. When I'm stitching letters, I like to use the couch stitch and the straight stitch. So whenever there's a bend in a letter, like the letter Y is quite bendy, wherever there's a bend, I just use the couch stitch and I make a little anchor exactly where I want the bend to be. And I do this in all of the letters that are bendy, for lack of a better word. So for O, for U, there are actually very few letters that aren't bendy. So I use couch stitch a lot of the time when I am stitching text. I'm going to do the rest of the text off camera because I like to have the shoe very close to my face when I'm doing text to make sure I get all of the stitches in the right place. After I'm done stitching the text, I'm going back in with the same green colour I used for the small sprigs on the inside of the shoe. I'm going to be stitching all of the stems before I start on the flowers. And you guessed it, I'm using more couch stitches for this. I'm also going to be using some more lazy daisy stitches for the leaves. I've always stitched my longer stems like this. I know a lot of embroidery artists like to do a bunch of little back stitches, little straight stitches, but I think this way is a little more beginner friendly and it's also a bit quicker than that other method. I also like how it looks like one continuous line. It doesn't look like a bunch of little stitches. Again, I'm using 2 strands of embroidery thread for these stems, just like I did on the inside of the shoes with the little sprigs. One thing to be mindful of is the little heel insert towards the back of the shoe at the bottom. It's really difficult to embroider through this. 2 of my stems actually stitched through this and I always curse myself for not following my own advice. I'd recommend steering clear of the heel insert if you can. I did want this design to be quite full on the shoe and go from one end to the other, which is why I ended up stitching through the heel insert, but if you can and if you're a beginner, I don't recommend doing this. It's really hard to to get the needle through that little rubber insert. Once I'm done with all the stems and the leaves, I'm going to move on to the first of the flowers. Again, I'm going to be using the lazy daisy stitch. You guys, if you're trying this at home, you should be pros at the lazy daisy stitch by now. Take a shot every time I say lazy daisy stitch, by the way. My mouth is starting to get a little bit tired from that repetition. But these flowers are going to be a little bit different from the flowers we did on the inside of the shoes. I'm going to be going back in with just one straight stitch in the center of each lazy daisy stitch. This is just going to fill up that petal and make it look much more solid. I'm going to be filling each of these flowers in the same way, just with one straight stitch down the center of each of the petals. I'm also using the same colors as I did on the insides of the shoes, and I'm also using 3 strands of embroidery thread, just like I did on the insides as well. Once I'm done stitching the last flower, which is the yellow flower, I'm going back in with that same color and stitching the pollen for all of the other flowers, just like I did on the insides. For these pollen stitches, I'm going to be doing French knots again, but I'm going to be wrapping the thread around the needle twice this time instead of once. This is going to make slightly larger French knots, which is perfect for these slightly larger flowers on the outsides of the shoes. And again, for the yellow flower, I'm going in with some of that red thread and stitching the pollen for that one. So once I'm done with embroidering the outside of that shoe, I'm going back in with my little mister spray bottle and I'm going to douse that in water, get rid of any of the remaining ink marks. I recommend leaving them to dry in a well ventilated place for 12 to 24 hours just to make sure the shoes are totally dry. Once your shoes are dry, all that's left to do is untuck the tongue and relace the shoes. I really do love how these turned out and I hope that you do too. I tried to take inspiration from the painted piano, but I also wanted to stay true to my own art style, so I kind of put my own spin on it. It's actually making me kind of jealous that I won't be attending the Eras tour this year. Don't forget that I will be doing a giveaway for these shoes over on Instagram. Let me know in the comments if you're going to be entering, and if you found this video helpful at all, leave me a like and consider subscribing to my channel if you're looking for more embroidery tutorials. I embroider shoes all the time and I'm definitely open to taking requests if you have any ideas that you'd like me to bring to life. Thanks so much for watching and I will see you in my next video.